You know, the whole concept of socialism is really intriguing when you dive into it. I mean, it's not just one monolithic idea.
Yeah, it's like a whole spectrum of ideologies.
Exactly. And it all started as a response to the Industrial Revolution's inequalities back in the 19th century.
Right.
Workers were facing harsh conditions.
So people started thinking about alternatives to capitalism, right?
Yes. And that's where Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels come into the picture with the Communist Manifesto in 1848.
Yeah.
They advocated for a classless society.
They really laid the groundwork for modern socialist thought, didn't they?
Absolutely. Their ideas inspired numerous movements throughout the 20th century.
But socialism isn't just about Marx and Engels, right? There are so many variations.
Yeah, it's like socialism is an umbrella
Right.
term for systems that emphasize collective ownership and economic equality.
So like democratic socialism and social democracy?
Exactly. Democratic socialism supports democracy alongside social welfare
Yeah.
while allowing for private enterprise.
Kind of like what you see in the Nordic countries?
Yes, countries like Sweden and Denmark implement social democratic policies with universal healthcare and education.
Right. But they still have capitalist economies, don't they?
They do, but they balance it with strong social welfare programs.
But then there's Marxist socialism, which is more about revolutionary change.
Exactly. Marxist socialism advocates for the overthrow of capitalism
Right.
to establish a classless society.
And that led to the establishment of the Soviet Union under Lenin.
Yes, the 20th century saw socialism influencing major political movements, for better or worse.
Yeah. But not all socialist experiments were successful, right? Some collapsed due to inefficiencies and authoritarianism.
Right, the Soviet Union is a prime example of how state-controlled socialism can fail.
Exactly. You know, I sometimes wonder if the failures were due to socialism itself, or just the way it was implemented.
That's a good point. It's often about governance and execution rather than the ideology itself.
But critics often argue that socialism leads to excessive state control, limiting individual freedom.
Yeah, and they say it can reduce innovation and economic growth.
Right. But at the same time, some socialist policies have improved living standards in various countries.
Social welfare programs like universal healthcare and education have had positive impacts.
Yeah. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's more about how the principles are applied.
Yes, and there are core principles like economic equality, collective ownership, social welfare, and democratic participation.
Right. Speaking of collective ownership, some models advocate for state or worker ownership of key industries.
Right? Sectors like healthcare and transportation are often cited.
Exactly. But then you have libertarian socialism, which rejects state control altogether.
Exactly. It favors voluntary cooperation and decentralized power.
It's interesting how socialism can range from advocating for more government control to less.
Yeah, it's almost paradoxical, but it
Right.
highlights the diversity within socialist thought.
And key figures like Rosa Luxemburg emphasize democratic socialism and workers' rights.
Right. And in modern politics, you have leaders like Bernie Sanders promoting democratic socialism within capitalist economies.
Yeah. So in the US, some socialist policies exist alongside a capitalist framework.
Exactly. Programs like Medicare, Social Security, and minimum wage laws.
Right. But critics argue that high social spending requires higher taxes.
Yeah, and they worry about the tax burden potentially discouraging economic productivity.
I see. But supporters might say that the benefits of social welfare outweigh the drawbacks.
And that economic equality can lead to a more stable society.
Exactly. So it's a balancing act between providing social welfare and maintaining economic efficiency.
Exactly. And that's why many countries opt for mixed economies, combining capitalism with socialist policies.
Right. Like planned economies versus market socialism?
Yes, some models rely on government planning, others
Yeah.
allow for regulated private markets.
It's fascinating how these different approaches aim to achieve similar goals.
Absolutely. And understanding socialism's strengths and weaknesses helps us form informed opinions on government policies.
Definitely. It's important to look at historical examples and current implementations.
Yeah, and consider the impact on economic growth, individual freedoms, and social welfare.
Right. So, in the end, socialism is a broad ideology with various interpretations.
Exactly. And it's up to societies to decide how to incorporate its principles in a way that benefits their people.
Well said. It's been a really enlightening discussion.
Yeah, I'm glad we could delve into this topic.
Me too. Let's continue exploring more topics like this in the future.